people keep exploring the secrets of our genes. Hope is blooming here. I see you. Your reverence for every color of life. I see war. The city is in ashes. Bombs are wake-up calls. Life is no longer peaceful. Pain is raging. I see disaster. Volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis destroy everything in an instant. But I see the undying hope in their eyes. Their love, hatred, sorrow, and felicity. I see you, your attitude of resistance and uncompromising. I see dispute. Conflicts have never stopped, nor has development. Trade is the bridge to all the world. I see science and technology, the lunar probe speed towards the universe. Its rover will make dreams come true. The unknown is no longer mysterious. I see you, your faith in linking the world. I see nations. I see our fate. I see the facts because I need them. I need to know all the truth around us. I see you and me.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the second CGTN Global Media Summit and 2018 Global Video Media Forum. My name is Liu Xin. I'm host of The Point with Liu Xin on CGTN, and it's great to see the great majority of you back here to follow our program. So this morning we had a lot of topics covered. We covered a lot of ground and discussed in depth, or tried to go into some depth in some of the complicated issues. And this afternoon we're going to continue to talk about a host of topics. We're going to explore in-depth topics such as innovative media business models, social media information security, and the secrets behind some of the contents that have gone super viral on social media. I hope you'll find them interesting and inspiring. So let's head straight into our program and put our hands together to welcome our first keynote speaker for the afternoon, Mr. Brian Su. He is the head of Partnership of Greater China and Korea at YouTube, and he's going to share with us how can YouTube help Chinese content producers export Chinese culture globally while building a business. Welcome, Mr. Su.
My name is Brian. I'm in charge of the partnership business of YouTube in China and Korea. 那我中文就只会说这么多了。
Every month, more than 1.9 billion people are coming to YouTube. And every day, they are watching more than 1 billion hour-long content on YouTube. And every minute, more than 500 hour-long contents are being uploaded to YouTube. All these big numbers have changed so many things we know about the media. Today, I would like to talk about the implication and also cause of the change. Milana Coco, she is 22-year-old YouTube creator living in Russia. She has been very successful beauty and fashion creator with more than 2 million subscribers. She also does some of her reaction video to interesting content she found on the internet. Let's have a look. So this is a Don't Judge Me challenge with this Chinese boy edition. This video became so popular and also a global sensation on YouTube. This actually helped many global audience to see the cool Chinese young culture. I think the biggest change in media these days is the fact that any local content and local culture can travel globe very easily, easier than ever. I would like to show another example. This is from James Corden show, which is one of the popular late night show these days.
Zaddy?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Josh Groban. Daddy, 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 daddy. Daddy Shark. Daddy Shark, do 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 do. Daddy Shark, do.
Baby Shark, a nursery rhyme created by an app developing company in Korea, became so popular and global sensation. So far, it has almost 2 billion views on YouTube, and also even marked as BBC Top 40 music chart. I think this is a great example of how local content actually can travel and find global audience by leveraging platforms like YouTube. Right now, in China, we have the same success stories. Babybus was an app developing company in China. They found many of their gameplay videos are not only being watched, but also very popular on YouTube. Guess what? They started their own YouTube channel. In the beginning, they uploaded a lot of gameplay videos. Soon after, they started creating original animation. It was very successful. They even localized their content in 8 different languages. They got the viewership from all around the world, including US and Japan, to top 2 market in terms of the animation. With this effort, now they are seeing significant growth in their viewership and revenue on YouTube. I don't think they are the only example here in China. Including CGTN, the majority of TV broadcasters in China, they are making global revenue and they are building global audience on YouTube. Recently, even Chinese endemic creators are building global presence on YouTube. Ban Gongshi Xiaoye is a great example. She was the first Chinese endemic creator who exceeded 1 million subscribers. Over the last 18 months, she added 2.7 million subscribers. And what is the learning here? What is the implication? Production, distribution, exhibition. Those are three major components in media industry. In production, with technology innovation, everyone can create the content. Simply speaking, there are so many content available. You may say, oh, that's not a premium content. That's UGC, and that's PGC. However, I think that's very production-driven idea. If you see this from user's perspective, there are only two kinds of content. Worth watching content, not worth watching content. So if you don't have engagement in your content, it will be more difficult to find audience in the future. From distribution perspective, we are seeing dismantle of the traditional content supply chain. This is what used to be. So basically, everyone in the market, they have their own unique functions. And only local broadcasters can access audience in the market in a scalable way. And this is happening now. Not only local broadcaster, even talent, producer, advertisers, and foreign broadcaster can directly reach this audience in that market. This means if you have a good content, now you can address this opportunity in various markets. From exhibition, content consumption is getting fragmented. It's very hard to find audience in one place. Audience are consuming content in a different way from others. They want to control what, how, when, where to watch content. I think this is a good chart showing the current situation. This is a chart showing how big screen TV is used in US household. Not to mention smartphone. Even on big screen TV, users, audience, they're spending more time with OTT, with which they can control content experience better. What does it mean from monetization perspective? Maybe this can be risk in domestic market. However, if you think from different perspective, I think this is a great opportunity for many of us here. If you can have engaging content, now you can access global audience and you can monetize your content globally by leveraging platforms like YouTube. In doing that, I think China is in better position. There are more than 70 million Chinese-speaking people around the world. They can be your supporter. They can be your facilitators in doing this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Su. That was an abrupt end. I was expecting you to say a little bit more, but I guess maybe that's a teaser for us to think even further. Will it be possible that you design my YouTube content for me in the future so that I can go super viral? Thank you very much. By the way, I think CGTN, if we have a YouTube channel if you have a channel on YouTube, it's probably not just targeting Chinese communities overseas, but also English-speaking communities globally. Okay, so indeed, it's a lot of new innovative ideas to explore. Why don't we talk about it more systematically in the next panel discussion? Let's welcome my next colleague, moderator Christopher Pleitgen, Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development at Watch It, a video creation platform, and he's going to moderate the panel on innovative business model for media. Mr. Pleitgen, welcome. Good afternoon. Have a good panel session.
To the stage as well. Don't be shy. Greg. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished audience, good afternoon and welcome to panel 3 on the first day of the Global Media Summit VMF here in Chongqing. As my colleague was saying, my name is Christoph Pleitgen. I am delighted and honored to be your host and moderator today. Looking into the audience, I actually recognize some faces from Sanya just 12 months ago. And I remember we had a similar conversation, and that conversation was overshadowed by news of some of the shooting stars, the pure digital players who had such high aspirations discussing or disclosing that they had missed their profit targets, they were laying off a number of their staff. In general, they had fallen short of their aspirations, and those developments certainly overshadowed the discussion at the time. Now, fast forward 12 months to today, what a roller coaster of transformation and change it has been. One of my colleagues in the industry summarized it as follows. He said telecommunication companies are becoming media companies are becoming telecoms, internet companies are the new media companies. As technology advances, driven by user preference and habit, we're seeing media companies ask very, very fundamental questions. Questions such as how to do business, how to think about partnership and alliances, and maybe importantly, how to determine who is friend and foe. And I feel incredibly privileged today to share the stage with such a strong panel of distinguished industry leaders. They're representing news agencies, they're representing publishers and broadcasters, they're representing platforms, and interestingly enough, very often they fall into more than one of those categories. And let's talk about that. What they have in common as well is that they are driving change and transformation in the industry we all work in. And let me introduce them to you. On the far side, we have Maxime Vandenbroek. Am I pronouncing that halfway correctly?
You're right.
Thank you. Maxime started his career as marketing manager at TV5 Monde. He's based in Hong Kong. He there participated in the regional development with cable operators and digital distribution businesses, and he then joined Euronews in 2016, initially as distribution manager, and was then promoted to his current job as head of partnerships, content sales, and distribution. Welcome, Maxime. Next to him, and you will notice there is a bit of a Reuters theme, past and present, to this panel today, is my friend Madhu Soman. Madhu is currently the head of broadcast sales Asia Pacific for Bloomberg Media, and there he manages the syndication services both for television and for radio in the entire region. And because he is a man of many talents, he also handles agency sales, strategic partnerships, and TV distribution for South Asia. And Madhu was with Reuters for 14 years in a number of senior editorial positions, primarily in India, but then also in London. In the middle, we have Ms. Zhang. Welcome, Ms. Zhang. She joined Alibaba in 2017, and there, I want to get this right, she currently serves as Vice President of Alibaba Media Entertainment and Business Group, Youku, and there she's in charge of program production, and she's led a number of very, very interesting efforts around vertical video, short-form video formats. I'm very curious, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you about that. Ms. Zhang has also worked at CCTV, both on the television side in terms of producing some of the very popular TV entertainment formats, but also as Vice President of the Economy Department. She was then later also at iQIYI as Chief Information Officer. Welcome, Mrs. Zhang. Next to Mrs. Zhang is Greg Beichman. He is currently the Vice President of Content Sales and Partnerships at CNN International. Greg also manages CNN's news source content syndication business and its international affiliates, currently, I believe, well over 1,100 partners. And prior to joining CNN International, Greg was a senior editor and commercial executive, surprise, surprise, at Reuters. And he also held a range of international editorial postings in Brussels, India, China, and Japan, amongst others. And last, but by no means least, John Pullman. John Pullman is the global head of Reuters Video and Pictures. John is based in London and runs a team of more than 600 journalists who work together to provide a 24/7 global news service. He sells, or he creates that is being sold to broadcasters and news publishers. Before joining Reuters, and this I did not know, John worked as a financial reporter for The Sun. He was also the editor of ITN's News at 10 and is one of the founding editors of Al Jazeera English. Welcome, Ms. John. Welcome, gentlemen. I look forward to the conversation. And we're looking forward also to hopefully not only entertaining and informing you, but also exercising in an exercise of time management. So we'll keep the conversation crisp and tight, but there will be time for questions. So what are we going to do today? We could actually spend the entire session with each and every one of you. There's so many interesting developments that are relevant in all of your businesses, but let's find out about some of those. Let's then broaden the discussion a little bit, talk about the implications on business model, distribution, content strategy. Let's open it up to questions, and then let's summarize. And I'll start with you, Maxime. Euronews, NBC. So in 2017, NBC News, for those of you who do not know, I suspect that's not a lot, acquired a 25% stake in Euronews, and Euronews NBC has just launched a 17-hour rolling news service. Tell us about how that is different from Euronews, what Euronews did before. How is that different from what others are doing? And how are you thinking about the commercial opportunities associated with that?
Okay, so as you may know, the NBC Euronews project started in May last year when, as you said, NBC got a 25% stakes in our network. So with this partnership, it has given us access not only to their money, but also to their reporting muscle. So we have new shows. We just started 1 month ago a morning show about Europe. We have late night shows now and afternoon shows. So as before our channel was less human, I may say, now you can see more faces on screen.
Fantastic. And do you want to talk a little bit about the commercial opportunities that go hand in hand with this redirection?
So since we started this partnership, we spent a lot of time working on strategy for content syndication, and with the idea that our partners will come to us for the single source of information, as we gather now the news from NBC News, so America, the news from Europe, and also the news from Africa with our sister channel, Africa News, launched 3 years ago.
Excellent. And does this bring about new advertisement opportunities? Is it about delivering a better product? Is it all of the above? Or?
Definitely a better product, I may say, and advertising opportunities in America for the aged advertisers, for sure, and of course many projects coming in the future. And Euronews channel will be rebranded eventually, Euronews NBC.
Very interesting. Thank you, Maxime. Madhu, I want to talk to you about two initiatives that Bloomberg has recently engaged in. One is TikTok, and that's your partnership with Twitter. It is probably one of the first 24/7 news works on Twitter. You have recently also announced that you're going broader than Twitter and turning this into a website, a podcast, amongst other things. Can you tell us a little bit more about this initiative?
First of all, thank you so much to CCTV News Plus, CCTV Plus News Content and CGTN for inviting us on the stage and giving us an opportunity to explain what we are doing and how we see the future in broadcast and news media in general. Twitter has been our partnership with Twitter has been an exciting development because we are taking baby steps. We are actually the first breaking news, real-time news channel on Twitter, and the response has been tremendous. We have around 420,000 followers already, and it's growing by the day. And we have around 2 million views on a daily basis, which is, even by the feedback that we are getting from our partner, it's supposed to be really good. And that has emboldened us to take it beyond Twitter to other social media platforms. So we are very bullish about the journey that we've had with Twitter until now and the road ahead as far as where we take TikTok. So we are looking at exciting times now.
Congratulations. And another initiative, which I think you only announced just last week, and that's the partnership with the AP. It's a sales partnership, if I understand correctly. I'm interested, what has been the driver for this, for both the Associated Press and Bloomberg, but also what can your customers expect as a result of this?
Okay, that's, I knew that question was coming to me, but because it's also part of what I have to do. We have had conversations with AP around trying to create a new sales narrative from the agency side. So traditionally, where AP, AFP, and Reuters are everything to everybody, covering everything from general news to sports and entertainment, Bloomberg has been very targeted about what we do. We are good with business, we are good with technology, we are good with lifestyle, we are good with luxury and finance and markets, obviously. So from there, we also saw that the landscape of the agency market was changing with each passing year. Let's be honest about it. Are we going to continue in a two-agency world for long, where every newsroom will have access to AP and Reuters, or AP and AFP, or Reuters and AFP? No, those things are changing. People are not making that kind of money in news. So in that concern, and we are not in the market. We are definitely not competing directly with a Reuters or an AP when it comes to being everything to everybody. So we thought there is synergy working with AP and having a joint story to tell to the client and thereby to the audience, whereby AP comes in with their strengths and we come in with our strengths, and that combined force will make us a competitive factor in the news agency space. That's what we are very bullish about.
So a story of complementarity and a better product offering.
Exactly.
Excellent. Now, to Ms. Zhang, a slightly different story. What I'm intrigued about is you have created and led a number of highly popular television formats. So you are an acclaimed expert in the field of television broadcasting, of entertainment, and in your current role, you're focusing on slightly different formats. You're focusing on vertical video, you're focusing on short-form video. I'm curious, how does the creative process, how does the planning process, how does the execution differ between television productions and production for these social channels, for these newer social platforms?
其实这是一个挺尖锐的问题。
Well, in fact, this is a very sharp question.
我从电视台到互联网
When I
后，不断
moved from television station to the internet business, I've been asked very often about this. I think there are two major differences. Firstly, when I was working in the TV station, when I was creating content, the biggest difference with the internet is our users are vastly different. Internet users are mostly between 17 to 25 and 25 to 35. Put them together, those two groups account for over 50% of internet users for China. In China, possibly 60 to 70%. But people of this age, they know what they want. They know what kind of life they want. They know what content they want to watch. They know precisely what they want to do in order to get what they want, making them a very difficult group of users, but producing content for them means how we produce content, what we produce need to be completely different. The second difference is technological. Now the internet has not just changed the way of information dissemination. Most importantly, it is enabled by technology. Technology has created a lot of possibilities for content generation. An example, during the World Cup this year, we were almost 2/3 into the broadcasting of a World Cup, but at that particular point, our CTO came to me and he told me, you have got to try very hard in order to secure more high-resolution content. I said, why? I thought everything was going well. He said, let me show you this. I know you will be moved by this. And then he opened a screen on CIO, and then he showed me the 50-frame short video that we developed, and I can see the difference. I understand why he said I'm going to move, because with HD I can almost every drop of a sweat on the face of the athlete, every little expression on his face, and I believe in the future technological development is going to create even more possibilities for us to create better content.
So you're very much focused on production value. Is the process of testing formats, of testing ideas, is that also very different from your experience on the television side?
It's somewhat different because in internet there's so much information, so much content, which means we have more ways to test this content at a lower cost.
And the communication is not in a linear way, and as long as there is content to be broadcasted for television, it means cost, but in the internet age, we do not have the cost anymore. We can to broadcast as much content as possible. For example, we have a new program included in youku.com this year. It's lifestyle. It's a lifestyle bar with all the fashion content, all the food content. Why do we call it Lifestyle 18? Because we would like to see everybody is living life of an age of 18 years old. So it's your call, it's your life, so it's your lifestyle. This is something we try to create for our major audience. So we disrupted a lot of logics we used to gather content before. Now we know what's on trend, what's fashionable, what's popular, because we have Alibaba e-commerce platform, so we have big data of the consumers. We know what they are interested in.
That's very interesting, and maybe a good segue to you, Greg. Data, I think, is also something that's on the forefront of your mind. There was probably no bigger news in town than the merger between, or acquisition between AT&T and Time Warner. Tell us a little bit about the rationale. Tell us about what is the organization looking to accomplish, and what does it mean for a distinguished and well-known news brand like CNN? What's going to be different? What's going to change?
Thanks. And first, let me also say thank you to CGTN, Mr. Zhang, and CCTV Plus, Mr. Chow, Mr. Galway, for being here. It's delightful to be on stage with everyone and see everyone in the crowd here. With respect to Time Warner and AT&T, you're right, Christoph, this was a very big moment for two very big companies. AT&T, a telecom company with many hundreds of thousands of direct relationships with consumers, and of course Time Warner with a very strong suite of content, not just CNN as a news brand, but also HBO, Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers, many strong consumer brands. But if you think about both of those businesses, both are in tremendous flux right now. From the content perspective, the distribution model and the monetization model has always been working with an operator to reach an audience. And on the monetization side, it's been in advertising. If you think about what's happening in the content world, and you hear what's happening with FANG, our equivalent of BAT, Facebook, Google, Apple and everyone else, Netflix, etc., they monetize their content through either direct relationships with consumers who pay a subscription or with advertisers, and they can offer up very detailed segments of audience to those advertisers in ways that broadcasters really can't do. The traditional ratings currency that we sell advertising around can't compete with what Facebook can do. If you're launching a new product and you want 5,000 people in a city who might buy that product, Facebook can give you that data. So can YouTube, for that matter. Traditional media can't do it. So the thought process behind a merger like AT&T Time Warner is to bring together the data that AT&T has with its consumers, its tremendous reach and relationship with those consumers, and merge it with the content that we create at CNN and the content we create across Time Warner. And together we think there's a chance of competing with this tremendous challenge we face from FANG, from Facebook, Google, Twitter, all the other digital platforms who have this detailed data reach. For news, we think it's an incredible opportunity because CNN, if you think about a brand like HBO, you think about the other brands inside Time Warner, CNN has a regular interaction with its customers, with its viewers around the world. And so we think it'll be one of the leading edge products to think about as you grow more and more direct-to-consumer relationships for our business. Instead of working through those distributors, working through others, we want to understand our customers better directly and then use their data to power better content and also power better and more relevant advertising.
News is, of course, also at the forefront of your mind, John. Refinitiv. So last year, it was announced that Thomson Reuters had sold, I believe it was 55% of its stake in its financial and risk business to a private equity company called Blackstone. As part of that deal, it was also agreed that for the continued provision of Reuters News to that new company, Refinitiv, 325 million, or at least 325 million, would be paid over, I believe it was a 30-year period. That's potentially a tremendous injection of cash. What's going to be the impact on your job? How are things going to be different? How are you going to think about services and products for your customers in a different way?
Sure. So we've spent the last year at Reuters going through what we call Frexit, so F&R exit. So there's some misapprehensions around the deal. So yes, it's a $325 million deal for 30 years, and it'll rise by inflation each year. I'd love every customer to sign a 30-year deal. It's a fantastic safety net for a news organization to have. It's not a windfall because they are paying for a service which we will continue to produce. So it's not free money. What it means is that Reuters now has two customers. We have Blackstone and Refinitiv, who are customers of our financial news service, and then we have the media division, which is supplying news organizations and publishers around the world, including many in this room. So my focus is, and always has been, on the media side of the business. Refinitiv are mainly interested in text and mainly interested in news about financial markets, commodities, and so on. The media business is heavily driven by video and pictures and text. Where we're strong is where there's a crossover. So when there's financial news that media customers are interested in, or general news that then that's where the strength comes in. So it shouldn't change our business significantly.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Now let's have a slightly broader conversation. All of you are in the market. All of you are tremendously experienced. What are some of the things that you are seeing? How is, as a result of changes in technology, as a result of evolving user habits, as a result of some of the events that we just talked about, how you think about content strategy, how's that evolving? How are your products changing? How you interact with your customers changing? Maybe I'll start with you, Greg, as someone who looks at customers both as CNN, a broadcaster, but also through its news service activities.
Well, I think as Ms. Zheng was saying, I mean, the tremendous data that you can collect around your users is kind of the key thing that's changing how we think about our products. So, there was an era, and I think those of you in the broadcast industry will know this era well, when the broadcast journalists decided, here's what we're going to do today, and the internet people went away and in the basement and chopped up the video and put it out as a complement to the broadcast product. That's flipped completely. We now use the data from our website, from our apps, from our engagement on social to inform how we create the broadcast on a daily basis. And it allows us to do different kinds of storytelling for different platforms so that we can differentiate for each consumption experience. We might just send one camera to cover a story, but we can package it up for Snapchat, we can package it up for Weibo, we can package it up for a nightly news on CNN. And I think the data story there really allows us to do that. So that's a benefit that we've seen from the digital consumption of our content, which doesn't always get talked about because it's also undermining some of what the linear business does, but I think that's the biggest piece for us.
John.
I think that's interesting and absolutely applies. The question for all of us in the room is, when does digital money outweigh broadcast money? Certainly data and audience, I think generally you get more of that from the digital side, but we don't yet see the money coming through digital. So that's an interesting thing for us all to watch. I think one of the changes that I've noticed is the increasing importance of partnerships. Previously, most organizations thought we can do it ourselves. Now we're all working together much more than we used to. You talked in your intro about who's a friend and who's an enemy. I'm not sure it's clear. Some people an organization could be an enemy in one part of your business and a friend in another. So it's a very changing landscape. And I think we all need to be prepared to do deals with people who we might previously have considered competitors.
And would that be broader than the sales partnership between AP and Bloomberg? Could that include coverage as well? Could that include joint product development as well? Are there some thoughts along those lines?
Yes, I think it could. The idea of who exactly is our customer is changing. We now sell content to Google. They pay for content from Reuters. To many people, Google are the enemy stealing their audience. To us, they're a customer. So it's a landscape that is changing, and it's not always what people expect.
It's interesting. Maxime, how would you characterize Euronews's relationship to some of those platforms, the FANGs, if I remember correctly, Greg? Are they all the same, friend or foe? Do you prefer to work with some of them and a little less with some of the others?
Social media is a bridge to the generation of audiences, and to be social means platform, and yet to be in the game you have to be on the platforms, and yet being on the platform means less money, less control, less scale, and some views the platforms as a gravity problem. Like gravity, they exist, but there's nothing substantial that can be done to fight them. So a means of coexistence has to be found. And some are doing collaboration or co-petition, so cooperation with competitors, and some are buying stakes in digital pure players. I remember at that time NBC got invested in Euronews. They were also invested in Snapchat, and we all know that they invested in Vox, BuzzFeed. So knowing that, and if all of this can put us in front of the right audience, I believe the game's worth the candle.
That's very interesting, and I'm interested to follow up on John's observation about, yes, digital, more measurable, more transparent, but where is the money? That new strategy that is being formulated as a result of NBC Euronews or Euronews NBC, is that heavily slanted towards digital, or is there a balance between the traditional linear broadcast and digital? How do you see that?
We're still working on the final product, so unfortunately I can answer this question now, but I'm sure next year I could answer it. So yes, of course, we're working on linear, digital, so yes, please ask me these questions next year.
Fantastic. So let's make sure we invite Maxime for the next Global Media Summit VMF. to get an answer to that. Madhu, Bloomberg obviously opted for Twitter. What makes these guys a better partner than some of the other social platforms, or do you do business with all of them? Are you equally interested in all of them?
Among new media players, we have been speaking to everybody, but we decided to go with Twitter because things moved faster with Twitter. But that doesn't mean that we have kind of stopped speaking to everybody else. As we kind of spoke earlier, we are launching on other platforms in the coming months and years. But to take a step back, we are still engaging with linear distributors as well. And if you look at Asia, from being a pay-for-play channel, we are increasingly asking for cash for carriage. And we are converting many old distribution relationships into opportunities to make money, which has been a positive development as far as Bloomberg Television goes. Similarly, when it comes to what we do with Twitter, Bloomberg knows people in business probably better than most other organizations. So when we are with Twitter, like what Greg mentioned, data is heavily in play. We know data, Twitter knows data, and when an advertiser comes in for a media activation or a marketing campaign, we are able to provide them with a wholesome engagement opportunity, which is a win-win not just for Bloomberg and Twitter, but for the audience as well. Because at the end of the day, the content that we are creating is compelling enough to engage them at a deeper level for a longer time, which means that we all walk back and we are able to deliver more and better content. So we are engaging both with traditional distributors and with new platforms. Why? Because we are not going to sit back and cry. As my CEO said, we can either sit back and cry and see, just to be hard, Google and Facebook take the money and the market away, or we use our traditional assets and be disruptors ourselves. So we are ready for both, and we are not being overly aggressive, but we know our strengths, and we know that those strengths can be used to stay relevant in the media market, and that's what we are trying to do.
That's excellent. If we could actually give a microphone to Phil from AFP up in the front row here. Phil, also to get the discussion going with the audience, we very much want to involve you. My understanding is, if we could get a microphone to Phil, please. My understanding is that AFP is quite a bit more assertive. John Pullman is talking about the way forward in terms of dealing with Google, dealing with some of these other platforms, is to make them your customer. Let's do business together. My understanding is that AFP has been a bit more forceful in its position towards some of these platforms. Can you maybe enlighten us about that?
Well, we've been involved in several different tracks. One track that we've been pushing for some time is via the European Union, is with a change of legislation, a change of copyright legislation, in that we feel there's a tremendous amount of our content that is used by the big platforms and which is not properly recompensed. So we've been at the forefront of efforts within Europe to push for a change of copyright legislation, which could now be in the works and which could have an impact on our business. But that hasn't stopped us talking to the platforms on a purely commercial level, on a purely journalistic level. In the last year, we've rolled out a very successful fact-checking cooperation with Facebook. So we're now in more than, we'll be in about 20 different countries doing a fact-checking, well, it's a commercial fact-checking project with Facebook. They buy our content, and that's working that in parallel with also trying to lead a public discourse to say that platforms need to pay for content. It's worth something.
So a multi-pronged approach, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Ms. John, let's return to you. You are someone who has a tremendous amount of expertise in the creation of content, but you also represent a platform. When you hear some of what is being shared here, what are your thoughts on this? What makes Alibaba a good platform partner for some of these content providers, and what is an ideal scenario from your perspective? How should a partnership between a third-party content creator, someone who develops formats, highly attractive genres, interesting shows, and a platform, and more specifically Alibaba, how should that work ideally?
You just mentioned something very important here, that is platform. What makes us a platform is us being inclusive and open. And now at Alibaba, we have made several major changes in the way we create content. First of all, everybody has spoken of big data. Indeed, I believe data, how they change content creation is not the most important part. The most important part is how the content is distributed, because now the way content is gathered has changed tremendously. But in fact, the to-be effect has also changed. Let me elaborate. Take, for instance, now with the technological upgrading, we have generated a lot of ways for us to integrate with the users, and that is mainly enabled by the internet. And I believe interaction through content viewing is very important part of that experience. For instance, when a game is going on, we can incorporate a lot of interacting elements, and also when a show is going on, if we want to incorporate the ads there are more very interesting ways to introduce that, but that means and I think this is also something that we have been working on. And also very importantly, we have always been telling our customers the notion of we want to help you to do your branding. At the same time, we want to improve your performance at the same time. For instance, earlier this year we introduced an entertainment show called This is a Street Dance, something that we did with our partner, and as a result of that, our partner increased its market recognition by 70%, and for a short period of time the sales has increased by 30 million units. And this is something that we are continuing because we want to turn it into a synergistic effort for the brand to be bundled together with the shows that is pushed, or the content that is pushed through our platform. And thirdly, we want to develop a diversified way to produce one content, or in other words, even if there is one IP, we want to create different content that can be potentially marketed through different platforms. For instance, last year we did a program that was which is essentially about a search for delicacies, local cuisines everywhere in the world. This is led by a Chinese celebrity. It was marketed through and broadcast on YouTube, but at the same time we also worked in collaboration with a lot of other short video platforms with the participation of that Chinese celebrity. And in the meantime, on Tmall we also opened a e-retailer featuring that celebrity, and within just 6 months that flagship has become very well known, so much so that just 6 months later the sales has been over 30 million. And all those efforts are likely to change the relationship between the brands and the content we create.
That's very interesting. I saw Greg nodding. Is that some of the sophistication you're hoping for CNN in the future?
I mean, I think with respect to news, you know, the concept of using news to really sell products directly is probably less likely. There's always going to be a sort of wall. But I think in terms of you know, how content platforms monetize, I mean, Amazon, Alibaba clearly have, you know, they go a step further. They don't just have content. They don't just have user data. They actually have things they can sell that relate to that content. And I've seen things of, you know, high definition video with products embedded that you can purchase directly. There's all sorts of emerging technology there. So that's going to make the case for content even more interesting and compelling. I think for news, it's a different scenario. But with respect to social, I think our thought process is, look, we need to be where the users are. We need to be where the customers are. We need to build new products for social. But let's always get people back to CNN to monetize them best. Because as it stands today, you're sharing, you know, for $1 in revenue, you're going to share 40 cents with YouTube or Facebook, typically. That's the challenge we have with the social platforms. The way of working with them, which we increasingly do, is sort of using their reach. So a sort of cost per view model where we sell to an advertiser not just our own audience but also the audience that's sitting on Facebook or sitting on Twitter. That's another model that we're getting better at. I think it's all hands on deck when it comes to monetizing news. There really isn't a strategy you shouldn't try, but always try to get that monetization happening as close as you can to home.
Sage advice. And let me now, in the remaining minutes that we have, actually turn it over to you, our distinguished audience. We have an opportunity here to ask some of the leading thinkers and doers in the industry things that may be on your mind. Are there any questions in the audience? We'll keep going until we get chased off the stage. Not a single question? I can't believe that.
David.
No. I was just going to say the fact that we probably don't have any questions yet, probably people understood it very well. You want to...
Yeah, we actually do have a question right behind you.
Okay. Yeah, please.
It's from the CCTV Plus think tank, David Schlesinger.
Thank you. Greg, I was intrigued by your last comment that there's no strategy that you wouldn't try in terms of monetization. Could you just outline where the ethical lines are, or are there ethical lines that remain in this new environment?
Yeah, I mean, David, absolutely. I think we heard it earlier today in the conversation around fake news, around what's accurate and what isn't. I think for us, for CNN, and I think for many of the organizations in the room, there's still a very clear imperative to inform our audience that what we're delivering is news or not news. And when it's news, people subscribe or watch our products because they think they're getting something that's accurate, balanced, and transparent, and that there's not a commercial influence behind it specifically. When you're going out into that world of monetizing your product, yeah, you need to maintain that distinguishing feature or that wall between your news content and your non-news content. And when content's sponsored on CNN, we're very clear about that. We think that our users and viewers want to understand what's sponsored and what isn't. Those principles really haven't changed, and I think they can actually flow through even when you're on social media, even when you're on Twitter. I think it's incredibly important that your core product principles, your core product promise is maintained consistently.
Thank you so much, Greg. Maybe we have time for one more question and then we'll wrap it up.
I do have a question. Can I ask a question?
I think you can.
Okay, thank you very much. I do wonder if, for instance, our program, we have a Twitter account. Do you, or to any of our panelists here, do you recommend our individual account making advertisement on Twitter or on Facebook? Would that be considered a good thing or not? We are an opinion show, so we'll be pushing things like opinion pieces. So, yeah, any of the panelists.
Sure. I mean, the way I see it is these social platforms are best as a way of publicizing what you're doing on another platform where you can either make money or you own the audience. Because if you're on a social platform, you're sharing the audience and you're certainly sharing the money. If you're a commercial organization, you want to drive people to your own platform. So absolutely, we go to social for expanding our reach, but if you want to commercialize the audience or own them, you need to pull them back to a platform that belongs to you.
Thank you very much. And because we did promise to stay on time, I would suggest we wrap it up here. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been a wonderful audience. I hope we managed to do what we promised, which was to entertain and to inform. We did reasonably stay on time as well. Please join me in thanking my panel for what I hope you found to be an interesting and enlightening discussion. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Plagen. Great job. Thank you. And don't worry about the silence during the Q&A session. It happens all the time, especially in China. But that does not mean that you didn't do a good job. I have one short comment I want to make, if I may. When they talk about this lifestyle channel on Alibaba, they always have this age limit of 18 or something. What about people who are more mature, who are middle-aged, but who have enough maturity and wisdom and a lot to share with the audience? What's wrong with that? Thank you very much, indeed. So I'm very happy to hear when Xie Tingfeng opened that shop on the internet, he was very successful. I think there's a lot to sell. You just have to be promoted. And also, of course, we have to make our presence felt. We need to be able to enter into the world of the young people. In China, that probably means to be on a platform or in a program that's super viral. And one of the companies that have been particularly successful in coming up with programs or applications that have gone super viral is Tencent. So they have introduced products such as QQ and WeChat. Who doesn't go around in China without WeChat? Not many. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together to Mr. Yue Miao from Tencent.
各位领导、各位媒体的同仁
Honorable readers, dear friends from the media, good afternoon. It is a great pleasure for me to be here to share with you some secrets for some of our viral products. As you probably know, Tencent become the country with the widest connection in the world, because our slogan is to connect everything. This is our DNA, certainly DNA that has been sifted through to our media branch. But has there been any chemical reactions? Well, over the past 1 year, we have made our own little experiments with initial progress. Well, first of all, I would like to point it out is this case study. It happened in 2017 on July the 29th, to be more precise. We worked with a partner and introduced a program that is called Put On Your Military Uniform. And the activity was very simple. It adopted a minimalistic design style and reached out to the entire audience in China. And now it has generated enormous response. This is a very short description of that activity.
It was during August 2017 when we first proposed this program. It's a technology sponsored by Tencent. We have an integration technology which can just connect your headshot together with a body wearing the military uniform. So it went viral instantly on the internet. Over here we can see the photos from the members. We selected them. There are 20 sets, and the interface is quite simple. You can simply take a selfie of your face, then you upload it, and then we can generate all kinds of different photos for you wearing uniforms. I think there is a military dream in everybody. The daily active users are a lot. Between 29th of July and 31st and the 3rd of August 2017, we can see the downloads of our app is historically a new height. So we have accumulated PV of 1.074 billion and UV 168 million, and we are applying for the world record. We have downloaded 20 million times by users. So it ranked #1 in terms of the most popular app. In terms of cost, it's very little, as you can imagine, but the engagement is very successful. The product was quite successful mainly because of the following reasons. First, it's an H5 page, so very simple. But we have more than 6,000 servers backing the H5 up. Because for a single day, we can get more than 400 million photos uploaded to the server. And because it is affiliated to WeChat platform, so we have a lot of rules and compliance to follow, and we managed to achieve that. In only 9 days, we generated more than 1,261 files, and we have adjusted, optimized all the military uniform photos to the best. So if you look at the details of the photo, it's actually conforming to the fact. You can check the details of the uniform. It's exactly the same as the uniform worn by people in the military. And we use the technology offered to us by Tencent to make sure the merge of the headshot and the uniform is seamless. So we accumulated a lot of experience. We have to make sure that our product is designed for all, young or old, male or female. Some people would say for H5 program, you can simply get 5 million people engaged at most, but we have more than 700 million people engaged in this program. So as long as you can use a smartphone, you can be the potential users of us. And we have a very good technology because the photos are popular. Our users are willing to share the photos and to post the photos on the WeChat Moments on other social media platforms. And it's about passion, about love, about the sentiment, because it's August 1st. It's the festival to celebrate the military people, so people are encouraged to take part into this. It's creative as well, very simple creativity actually. In this process, we of course experienced some difficulties. There is negative report about us. Some people say we are trying to get access to the personal or private data of the individuals, but it's not true. And later we made a statement saying that we are not doing that. So we were back in the game. And then we have a very good technology that is the H5 technology backed by Tencent. And people are making a lot of recommendations. People are posting a lot of photos. It's self-marketing. And most importantly, it's technology behind this. Eventually, it's explosive in terms of popularity of the H5 product. It's also the most popular H5 product so far in the internet history of China. The second case, it's a project in collaboration with the CCTV. It's called a Happy Photo Studio. It's full coverage on the new media platforms, very simple user interface. First of all, you get this camera in the old-fashioned way, and then you have the dual head of a photo studio, and then it's the setting of the photo where it's going to be taken. Every year, especially during Spring Festival, when we get united with the family members, it's the tradition for us to take a photo of the entire family members. It's the rule, it's the tradition, it's the convention, and it's cozy. But nowadays, we are scattered all around in China. We do not necessarily live in the same place. So only when it comes to family reunion can we get the actual opportunity to take a family photo. That is the intention for us to create this product. And we use Tencent technology to realize that. It's the 50th anniversary of opening up reform in China, so we have 5 different backgrounds organized for the family photo. It's from 1980 all the way to 2018, and every 10 years there will be a huge change in terms of how you dress up, and we have paid a lot of attention to the details of the setup of the uniform, the dress. We studied millions of photos and eventually decided these are the details we are going to go, and we generated these models, these backgrounds, these setups with family members, with grandparents, with the children. You only need to upload the headshot of those people. The family photo will be automatically generated. In order to cater for the needs of the millennials or people born after 1990s, they can actually replace their own headshot with a headshot of a panda, so they don't feel embarrassed to share or to post. It was introduced this year in February, and as of March 15th, we have accumulated 16 million PV and 9.6 million UV. We have connected and 38 media organizations and more than 40-something enterprises to take part in this project, because our link can be automatically generated, and the logo of the media organization can be printed on the family photo. So it's a kind of advertising. Very good effect actually we have achieved, and in order to add a little bit more color on that, we developed some new advertising campaign. We have exposed on WeChat Moment for 1.77 million times, and in the backstage we see that we have users from 173 countries participating in this program. I think such impact is not easily achieved by many H5 programs, and we have invited Jackie Chan, the famous movie star in China, to take part in this program as well. I'm personally touched very much because a netizen named Jiangling Nuzi left a message saying that I'm smiling with tears in my eyes because my father has passed away. It's already 20 years, and it's a shame that he didn't leave us with many photos. So I'm really grateful that we have the opportunity to put him also in the family photo. A lot of people say that apart from Tencent, from WeChat H5 programs, do we have other ways to have collaboration with enterprises? Actually, yes. We are developing a product called Weishi. It's a short video product. We have more than 100 media organizations joined us, and we have achieved a lot of positive results. Together with the Central Academy of Fine Arts, we have designed a collaboration project, and we got more than 6 million likes in the project. A case to share with you. This year in May, we organized an event called Showing Your Appreciation to Your Country. It's very simple. We ask celebrities and opinion leaders on the internet to signal the message of showing appreciation to your country, and it was quite influential. A lot of people participated in that program. It's the best result we achieved by collaborating with social media platforms. So apart from short video product, we also work with train stations and web products of CCTV. We put a lot of posters on the entrance of the train station as well. In traditional media time, we tend to use mega communication campaigns to achieve effect, but nowadays we tend to use small, exquisite activities to generate a huge internet sensation. So it's basically the same effect, but the cost is greatly brought down. How can we be so successful in this? In nature, maybe you think the shark is powerful and the lion is powerful. The dragonfly uses a very simple way to catch the enemy. So it's actually to serve the same purpose. So I think important is that we have to understand what is favored by our users and how to use the simplest way to realize that Tencent has a lot of popular products. For example, WeChat, we have more than 1 billion users, and QQ has more than 800 million users, and we have Photoshop products, music products, karaoke products, video products. We can actually create a synergy among those products, and there can be another explosive of products generated in the coming years.
Indeed, it is also my first time to have a peek into the secrets behind these super popular programs. They're actually dragonfly projects, not sharks or lions. So we're going to have a 10-minute tea break, and we'll see you right after that. Don't go too far away. Thank you.
Ago of CGTN's News Center marked the beginning of a new era in the organization's cross-media collaboration. Today, the center is CGTN's main hub, coordinating its output in various languages as well as the activity of its headquarters in Beijing, its production centers in North America and Africa, and its network worldwide. In just a year, the concept of multimedia broadcasting has become firmly rooted at CGTN. As the scale and range of its multimedia products have expanded, so has a new generation of multidisciplinary editors, reporters, and news anchors has emerged.
CGTN. I'm Zhou Yue in Beijing.
In the past year, CGTN has strengthened its news gathering capability based on a comprehensive reporting network that covers China and the whole world. Its growing team of reporters is expanding the scope of its coverage. At major events and for breaking news, CGTN's reporters are always among the first on the scene. From the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China to the Trump-Kim Singapore Summit, from the site of the DPRK's destruction of its nuclear facilities, and the conflict zone in Syria, to Iraq, Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, Somalia, and Venezuela, CGTN's correspondents have filed an enormous volume of exclusive reports. CGTN has taken huge strides in innovating its content, reporting style, and technology.
Are you ready?
Live streams, short videos, brief commentaries, animations, and reality shows all are enhancing the richness and originality of its digital output. Its television broadcasts have also embraced change. Joint coverage by reporters from China, North America, and Africa. A studio set up in a village to document poverty alleviation work in China. Special coverage of the 15th anniversary of the Iraq War. A series of reports from on board a container ship following the course of the maritime Silk Road. The list goes on. In the past year, in its international cooperation, CGTN has continued to promote its dialogue with the world in the form of jointly planning, co-producing, and simultaneously broadcasting special programs with its global partners. It has extended its cooperation to documentaries and reality shows. CCTV Plus, CGTN's video news agency, has signed contracts with 336 media organizations and has provided its news resources and live signals to 1,195 media organizations, including the BBC and CNN. Today, China is connected more closely with the rest of the world than ever before. CGTN, whether reporting on China or the world, provides a global viewpoint. In focusing on issues of universal concern, including globalization, free trade, regional and global integration, the fight against terrorism, the immigrant crisis, and climate change, it offers its global audience a point of view that is different and constructive. In the future, CGTN will continue striving to improve its content and to offer better products based on the principles of multimedia communication, mobile first, and quality output. In continuing to expand the scope of its international cooperation, CGTN will, by working hand in hand with its worldwide partners in this golden age of information, shoulder its responsibility for enhancing global communication. CGTN, see the difference. World, CGTN's annual Media Summit, exploring the latest trends, opportunities, and challenges, discussing how to produce compelling content, align media platforms, protect data, and harness the power of new tech. Join us for the CGTN Global Media Summit and VMF 2018. Opening and connecting the world, CGTN's annual Media Summit, exploring the latest trends, opportunities, and challenges, discussing how to produce compelling content, align media platforms, protect data, and harness the power of new tech. Join us for the CGTN Global Media Summit and VMF 2018. It's October in Beijing, and the trees are turning golden. In a corner of the Multimedia News Center at CGTN headquarters, the digital media team is streaming a live broadcast. Simultaneously, CGTN's English channel is covering the same event, live. At CGTN, it is now routine practice for digital media and television to work together, sharing the same resources, signals, and reporters. The launch a year ago of CGTN's News Center marked the beginning of a new era in the organization's cross-media collaboration. Today, the center is CGTN's main hub, coordinating its output in various languages as well as the activity of its headquarters in Beijing, its production centers in North America and Africa, and its network worldwide. In just a year, the concept of multimedia broadcasting has become firmly rooted at CGTN, as the scale and range of its
2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to the afternoon session of the CGTN Global Media Summit here in Chongqing. I'm joined by John Pullman, the Global Head of Video and Content at Reuters. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Could you first of all tell us what your impressions of the forum have been so far?
So I think so far we've had a day of really interesting discussion. There's a lot of people here from all over the world, and it's a really useful opportunity to share views, to hear what other people are doing, and to learn.
Has there been a session or a panel that has stood out for you so far?
Well, what I get most from this is learning about China. So China is, you know, there's 1 billion plus people in China, huge country, really important on the world stage, and not widely understood by the rest of the world. And certainly not, I'm no China expert, so anytime I can get to spend here learning about what's going on in the Chinese media is useful for me.
Are you based in London?
So I am, yeah.
Is there, do you get an impression of the trends that Reuters are particularly looking to pick out from China? Are you just looking for more for harder economic stories, or are you also looking to expand to maybe more softer lifestyle stories, which are bringing more what actually goes on in China?
Sure. So I mean, I would say both. I mean, the rest of the world is very interested. As I said, China is a place that's not widely known or understood. So there's a lot of demand from the rest of the world for news about China. They want to know everything from how the politics work to how people live their daily lives. And we cover all of that with our teams in Shanghai and Beijing. So the more time we can spend here, the better.
And if we could speak a little bit about your career, because it's very distinguished. You spent some time at The Sun, I believe, as a financial reporter, at ITN, for British viewers, News at 10, I think you were editor of, and Al Jazeera, English as well, before Reuters. Could you just run us through some of the high points, perhaps?
Sure. So, I mean, I had what was probably at the time a traditional career. So I started in local newspapers, then I worked for a national newspaper, then I went into local TV, then national TV, then international TV. So, and now I'm at Reuters, which again I guess is international TV. So that's a fairly traditional path. I don't think it's the path people will take today, because I think the media landscape has changed dramatically with the rise of the internet, digital news. Things move faster. Certainly I wouldn't advise anyone to start their career on a newspaper in the West, because actually newspapers are not where most people get their news today.
How do you think the Western newspapers are adapting their model? Is it effective so far? I mean, there's many different models people are following. Is there one you think has stood out?
I don't think anybody's cracked it yet. I don't think they've found a solution. I mean, the challenge is you can reach far more people digitally on social media, but you can't necessarily make money to support your business from those people. So people, you have to run a sort of, I think what's evolving is a sort of mixed model where people use social media to advertise what they're doing and to pull people in. But then when they want them to really engage with the content, they want them to do it on their own platform or behind a paywall, so that then they can monetize that audience and support the business. So, I mean, there are various ways of doing it. The Guardian appears to be successful without having a paywall. The Times has a paywall and is successful. So there's not one way yet, but certainly a lot of people are struggling, and particularly in local news where that pretty much has been crowded out.
There's been, talking of crowding out, then amateur content is a bigger and bigger phenomenon, I guess. I think maybe 10 or 15 years ago we used to hear about citizen journalism, but maybe it didn't really peak. There was people writing online, not too much happened with it. But nowadays, with the advent of mobile phones with great cameras, great software to make videos, it's exploding, particularly in China with apps like TikTok, which is a short video app. Do you see apps like that and amateur content like that goes on those apps as a challenge to the kind of quality reporting that somewhere like Reuters does?
So I would say absolutely not a challenge. It's a fantastic aid, bonus, assistant. Because the truth is, you're absolutely right. There are millions and millions of videos created every day. You're right. People don't use the phrase citizen journalists anymore. They talk about eyewitnesses. But unless you know exactly what that person is filming and the backstory, you don't know whether it's genuine or what motivated it. So we use a lot of that content in our service. We have a global team who spend their days looking for news shot by the public, verifying it, getting permission to use it. So we will very rarely these days will Reuters be the first camera at the scene of a breaking news story. The public will be there first. But the public aren't journalists. They may be people with cameras. They may film really well, but they're not journalists. So there's always a role for the journalist, but they have to work hand in hand with the eyewitness.
Yeah, that was very much, we spoke to Phil Chatwin from AFP earlier, and he was saying the same thing. It was tremendous when there's a natural disaster, for example, and there was on-the-moment videos, but then that gave time to bring in professional journalists to really report the story, but gave a bit of like a bridge. Until
no, absolutely. I mean, the fact is, not all news is breaking news. Natural disasters, yes, someone will film a building falling down or a tornado hitting, but political corruption or those are not going to be ever covered by members of the public. That's where journalists have to do lots of hard research and work to uncover stories.
What are the processes that you go through to fact check, for example, that kind of content? I mean, fake news is obviously a buzzword the last couple of years. What kind of steps does Reuters go through to try and guard against that? Guard against repeating it, for example?
Sure. So it's a mixture of technology and human skills. So there are all sorts of programs we use that can tell you when was a video shot. We can then compare the landscape with the sort of things you can find on the internet and satellite maps. We use humans. So we have a global team of people speaking probably every language under the sun. So we can listen into the video, identify what people are saying, maybe even identify an accent, and then cross-check it with what we know from other sources. So there are various ways. Sometimes technology is all you need, sometimes you need the human touch, but the real secret here is to speak to the person who filmed it. If you can speak to them and check out their story, you can usually ascertain quite quickly, is this genuine?
Okay. You mentioned the use of technology in fact-checking, but also I know that Reuters is making more use of AI of late. You mentioned to me off camera that it's not using so much in video yet, but it's something that will be coming. Could you just expand a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, the sort of limits of AI, I think, are infinite at the moment. So how will it be used? So facial recognition, I think, will play a part. If you filmed a crowd, you don't have to type in who's there. The program will tell you. If you want translation, AI can do that for you. So I think it'll be a fantastic tool to speed up the work of the journalist and maybe free up the journalist to do the harder editorial work that a machine can't do.
Okay, fascinating. Thank you so much. I understand that the final session of the day is about to begin. So, John, thanks so much for joining us. And enjoy the final sessions on the live stream. You can follow us on our app, on Weibo, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on our website. Keep tuned and don't forget to send in your comments.
The way to say hello, to greet someone is ni hao, so ni hao. But I also just learned that the way to say that to a group is ni men hao. I apologize, my tones are all wrong. No, that's unacceptable, no. But since I'm director of the Nieman Lab at Harvard University, I thought that I could lean into the Nieman business there. Anyway, let's get going. To be alive in 2018 is to be hacked. I don't know if there's anything that really sums up our existence in this digital world than the fact that we are going to be submitting data that we wish was private onto some sort of platform, onto some technology company's site or app, and eventually that information is going to fall into the wrong hands. I went searching for headlines to confirm this fact, and it wasn't that hard to find them. Of course, back in the early part of this year, we had the Cambridge Analytica scandal involving Facebook, where 50 million Facebook profiles had been improperly, although not really in violation of Facebook's rules, been accessed by a company that has some interesting political ties. Let's leave it at that. Just a couple weeks ago, Facebook announced it was hacked again. Another 50 million users had been affected. Now, to be fair to Facebook, and I definitely want to be fair to Facebook, a couple weeks later they did revise that to only 29 million. So it's only 29 million people, don't worry about it. I don't want to just harp on Facebook. Google, the other giant that often gets lumped in together as the duopoly in media circles, just shut down this past week Google+. It's not particularly successful social network because it turned out that for some time there was a bug that leaked all the information for the remaining 6 people on Google+. And of course, for a long time, we've had instances of malware and other circumstances where the information on your phone or on your other electronic device can be accessed by someone with ill intent. I know you've been busy today, so you may have missed the most important news of today, which was that earlier today it was announced that a special dating app that was designed just for supporters of Donald Trump was hacked. This just broke a few hours ago. It's sadly a true story. It's a little bit ironic, isn't it, that supporters of Donald Trump would have problems with information security and all their information would end up leaked onto the internet. I used a service called Firefox Monitor, which allows people to enter their email address and see how many times a public hack of some company's database has included your email address and other information. And it turns out for my main email address, 11 times is the answer. Some of these companies I'm familiar with, some of them I have never heard of. But at some point, I entered my email address and my password, and apparently that's out there right now. All of this has led up to stories like this one. Are consumers suffering from data hack fatigue? I'll note this is a story from 2015, so if we were suffering from data hack fatigue then, we must be past the point of data hack exhaustion at this point. Given all this that's happening, it really does lead to some existential questions, right? Is this something that's just going to be the new normal? Are we simply going to accept the idea that information that we want to keep private is going to be spread regularly to nefarious characters? Let's back up a little bit. Why is it that social media platforms are particularly easy marks, are particularly attractive targets for folks who are trying to do these devious things? Social media is deeply personal media. If you think back to the days of pre-digital media, the distribution of news was something that cost a lot of money. You either had to buy a broadcast tower, which is very expensive, all the machinery to go along with it. You had to buy a printing press or have access to a printing press, have all the trucks that are going to be delivering the newspaper around. When production and distribution was very expensive, that meant that it made a lot of economic sense to have an editorial strategy that reached a very broad audience. This is what created the mass media. If you wanted to have something that's very expensive to produce, you needed to have a big audience. That meant you couldn't get too precise. When digital distribution comes along, of course, the cost of distribution approaches zero. Suddenly everyone can publish information. So while there may have only been 8 people in the world who were interested in photos of your new dog, you can now reach those 8 people. You don't have to rely on an expensive cost structure to do so. When publishers saw this at first, one bright spot they thought was that now it wasn't just up to publishers to make sure that people could discover their stories. People's friends, people's colleagues, people's family members could share stories themselves. It could be another way to gather a significantly sized audience. So we, publishers, moved into this idea quite thoroughly. We decided to put sharing buttons all over our sites. We decided to change our content. We started writing clickbait headlines. We started shaping our content to make sure that it would work properly on Facebook. We hired social media teams that were dedicated to optimizing the work that we were doing. And for a while that worked pretty well. This is data from 2016. from a large number of American and European publishers showing where they got their external referral traffic. In other words, what is the route through which people discovered an individual news story? And you can see at this time, roughly 80% of all traffic to news stories was coming from either Facebook or Google. We had leaned into search engine optimization for Google, and then we leaned into social media optimization for Facebook. I feel bad for the other lower social networks that are barely registering at the bottom there. What we may not have realized, though, is that we were working right into the hands of this famed Harvard dropout, Mark Zuckerberg. Because by leaning into sharing, we were building out the infrastructure that allowed him to gather the most complete data set for billions and billions of people that had ever been assembled. Those like buttons that we all put on our news pages would allow the tracking of Facebook users all across the web. The creating of it a remarkable psychographic profile of the sort that really only Facebook and Google and governments can achieve. So think about it. Facebook knows everyone you know. They know where you've lived. They know what content you like, what you buy, where you shop, what websites you visit. In a lot of cases, they're buying this data externally and matching it into their own internal data records on you. Google merely knows everything you've ever searched for. Not in China, I understand, but work with me here. Who and what you email if you use Gmail, what apps are on your Android phone, the locations you've searched for in Google Maps, what you chat about in one of the 15 different Google Chat applications, and the videos you watch on YouTube. They know this across devices, across years. It's an enormously rich data set, and it is incredibly powerful when it comes to selling advertising. That's why outside of China, currently those two companies, Facebook and Google, the duopoly, control roughly 70% of all global digital advertising. 70% of the entire world, ex-China, all that money goes to those two companies. So when you have this incredible data store, you can understand why it's a super tempting target to people who want to gain access to this information. On one hand, the traditional mode of hacking had been to hack for information and then try to use it for immediate profit. Maybe you take over a computer to create a bot network, or maybe you find a credit card number and you start ordering things on it. Then sort of next level up was identity theft, being able to take an identity that was created by one person and sell it off to someone else who was going to use it for nefarious purposes. The most recent conviction in the Robert Mueller investigation in the United States was of a California man who was using stolen online identities and then selling them to Russian operatives who wanted to look like legitimate Americans. But really the next phase of social media hacking and the target that it's going towards is targeted messaging. Now, on one hand, that's also Facebook's business model. That's also Google's business model. The entire reason to have all this data and to gather it and tie it to an individual user is so you can target advertising at them with sometimes alarming precision. But it's not just advertisers who can do that. You can also have that data be used to target leaked information, as we've seen in a few alarming cases in the United States. Just this past week, Facebook axed about 60 Russian accounts that were discovered were being used to harvest photos of people on Facebook and use that to inform a facial recognition engine that Russians wanted to use. It's very easy, after all of this, to feel a little bit powerless. These enormous entities have this enormous data set. They have no particular savvy, it seems, at making sure that it remains private. What's the right response? I think that we actually are seeing some evidence that both publishers and users are adjusting their behavior in response. This is a chart from the Reuters Institute at Oxford University. They're studying the share of Americans and people in other countries who are using social media for news. For the first time ever, that share declined this past year in the United States. A decline that was attributable entirely to a decline in the use of Facebook. Other countries have seen either a flattening off of what was previously a continuous rise or a reversal. It's not just Facebook users who are thinking about walking away. It's also Facebook that's trying to get away from the news business. This is a post that Mark Zuckerberg made in January outlining that he was no longer really that interested in news, that he was going to take steps to decrease the share of news and information that appeared on Facebook news feeds in favor of more photos of your new dog. And that effort worked. This is for the American news site Slate. This is the number of Facebook referrals that they have received from January 2017 until May of this year. This is a complete and total collapse of traffic being sent there. On the flip side, you also have an increase in the number of Americans and people around the world who are willing to pay for online news. It's still a minority. I suspect it will always be a minority. And there are always lots of issues around having a business model that is reliant on user payment. It necessarily means you're going to be targeting your content at a niche audience, an audience that is better off than average, that has a higher than average interest in news. One thing that advertising did was supply the basis for true mass media for decades. But nonetheless, we are seeing signs that people who are interested in news are stepping away from social media a bit and making direct connections with publishers. So I do think we are seeing that publishers and users might be getting a little bit smarter in how to use social media. So how can you deal with your own data security? I'm not a data security expert. There are a few things you can do. Have a good, strong password. Don't make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Come on, people. Second, do pay attention to your privacy settings. This is something that not many people do. Facebook always says that you have this incredible control over the amount of information you share, and that is true, but most people don't take advantage of it. Third, go ahead and delete a lot of stuff. The internet social media was born in a context where the idea was that information was just going to stay up online forever. The whole idea of a unique URL is that it is a universal resource locator that will always exist. But over time, people have come to realize that that tweet that they sent 8 years ago may not look that great in 2018. I've seen a lot of people become a lot more vigorous in deleting their old content, recognizing that transitory social contact is the norm. We don't record all of our conversations with our friends either and put them in a database that everyone can search. And finally, another option is just scale it back. I think in a lot of cases, if you want to see where social media is going, look at American teenagers. They have often, or teenagers more broadly, they've often figured out ways to adjust to the new reality. You know, the hip way to use Instagram now is to have a regular Instagram account that you use for public consumption, and a Finstagram, a Finsta that is where the real you is, that's locked down, only a small number of friends are allowed to see it. When Snapchat first gained popularity among younger users a few years ago, it was because the content that was posted there automatically disappeared, that there was some degree of privacy built into the app. And WhatsApp has taken off along with other messaging platforms like Signal because they begin privacy at the very beginning. Now this again has, like many of these things, has negative consequences. In the most recent election in Brazil, there was an enormous amount of misinformation that was being spread via WhatsApp. And it was very hard for people to figure out what was actually happening because it was so locked down. But these are the sorts of trade-offs that I suspect we're going to have to really reckon with in the future. One final thought. The most important privacy settings, they aren't in an app. They're in your head. We are not going to be in a position to make individual choices that are going to stop foreign governments from hacking into databases. We are not going to be able to make individual choices that mean that Facebook's data security will improve. But we are better able to make our own choices about what we put into those systems, knowing that someday it might come out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benton. I think for many of the people that might be watching us through our live streaming platforms, this piece just now might have been very interesting. Useful tips there and very applicable. I'm going to go home and start deleting my WeChat moments. But throughout the discussion we've had the entire day, I think one element has always been there, which is artificial intelligence, and I believe increasingly so. For news production, what kind of innovation can artificial intelligence bring? Can it play a role in new model for media convergence? Our next topic will be about just that. Let's welcome the moderator of our next panel, Mr. David Schlesinger, founder of Tripod Advisors, and he will moderate the session on the new model, the fusion, transition, and upgrading of media. Mr. Schlesinger.
Thank you very much. Why don't we just bring the whole panel on stage and get started so we can get started. Please come on up. We have a great panel to discuss these issues today. We have Mei Yan, who's the Deputy Director of CGTN's digital arm, so she'll be the working journalist on the panel. We have Adrian Wells, who's the managing director of NX, which represents 75 commercial broadcasters, so a powerhouse in the media world. John Lee, professor of digital media at University of Edinburgh. Benny Fu, international business manager of iFlyRec, who's an expert in artificial intelligence and in artificial speech. And we have Yan Peng, who's the general manager of Tencent Cloud, so one of China's most exciting companies working in the cloud. Thank you all very much for joining us today. Journalists used to think their business was just about telling stories, but the past 2 decades have seen tremendous technological inroads into the industry to the point where tech media is not only a powerful combination, but a necessary one for survival. As organizations upgrade their people, as they upgrade their capabilities, as they upgrade their credibility, they also have to upgrade their technology, or else they'll be left behind. So from new ways of delivering the product to new ways of reporting and creating, technology really is the key. Man, I'd like to start with you as the working journalist on the panel. How has artificial intelligence begun to impinge on your world? How have you thought about using it? What are some of the creative ways you think you'll be moving your newsroom to use it more in the next few years?
I think technology right now is part of our life. We live and breathe with technology as common people. As for the news industry, I think AI right now, I think people are very skeptical about AI's usage, and also we're debating about whether AI will replace human intelligence. But I would say for all the traditional newsroom, like news professionals, we need to embrace new technology, because like television is based on technology, internet based on technology. These changes will be inevitable. So we need to embrace and to experiment with those. And I think AI, I don't think it can replace human intelligence, because still AI is created by human. It needs instant human intelligence input. However, I think AI can help tremendously on content analysis, because based on algorithm, and it can help us to collect data to have better understanding of our users, have a better user profiles, and it will in turn guide our content production. But I know some newsroom, there are experimental with AI writing, which we haven't done yet, because I still feel that's a sophisticated work. I still feel AI might be doing some very easy, simple programmed, like sports news, when you have very clear rules. But in terms of creative journalist writing, I think it still have a long way to go, and I'm skeptical it will reach that stage, will be there. So I think AI can help in a way to assist and to provide more detailed analysis and guidance on our production, but it can't replace what journalists are doing. So maybe in the future, the newsroom will be part human, part machine, and we don't know. Looking forward to that.
So Adrian, maybe I'll go to you, because I think I'm right in saying that you had 75 members. Of those 75, what's really the curve in terms of those which are advanced in using new technology and those are lagging behind, and what are some of the more exciting things that you see amongst your members?
I think in regards to artificial intelligence, the number of working applications right now in commercial TV newsrooms are really quite small, but that's probably just the beginning of the process. Where we do see it impinging, and there are many, I just went to the IBC Technology Fair in Amsterdam this year, and there were many, many more than before companies who are operating in that area where if you have your content in the cloud, you can access many tools either from the big players like Amazon or from more specialist companies who can provide a sort of service layer once your content is digitized. So I guess right now what we see that there are companies operating in the space who can automatically tag your content. Facial recognition is really quite common now, so that you can access products where if you're operating an archive service, for example, or even a TV newsroom, you can tell who's speaking and why. There are other products in the market where you can set the search parameters around speech. So if you're listening to Trump and the story of the day is Kushner or maybe it's Jerusalem. You can preset these words, and an audio listening AI device will be able to clip up those relevant clips and spit them out for you. And also, we just had our own industry conference, my own organization, and one of the speakers there is a company that's actually specializing in automated data journalism, creation of data, creation of journalistic pieces based around data that's available in the UK, of crime statistics or health statistics. And what they've managed to do there is to create a template of a story and fill in the different numbers as they apply to different regions. And so they can create one template and 300 different versions of the same story. So that is the beginning of automated journalism, but still needs human oversight and human intervention. But it shows you that you can do a lot more without involving human beings necessarily as the main driver for that.
Thanks a lot. So Adrian mentioned the cloud, so maybe we should go to Yanpeng next and talk about what you see as the greatest applications of cloud technology for media, and how big do you think the media sector will be in terms of your business? Will it always just be a very small niche, or do you see media companies taking a bigger share of the cloud business at Tencent?
整个媒体呢，对于整个腾讯来说，不单单
For Tencent,
对整个腾讯来说都是非常
media companies are always important.
这个之前的这个消费的这个互联网，目前是
Before we were a consumer internet company, now we are an industrial internet company. We pay a lot of attention to media brands, especially when it comes to AI and the Tencent Cloud. For artificial intelligence, we have accumulated 20 years of experience in AI because we have been doing social networking and internet business for 20 years. We have accumulated a lot of data. Now we would like to make use of the data. We would like to open the data. We are going to converge with the media companies. We are going to benefit media companies with our data.
Okay, that's interesting. So maybe Benny Fu, we can talk to you a little bit about the artificial voice and AI that you've been working with in your company. How do you see that helping media companies in the future?
科大讯飞呢是一直从事于人工智能和智能语音相关的
in artificial intelligence and natural language processing. We have been trying a lot of technologies, applying them to media application. For example, we have a cloud integration plus machine learning. We apply this technology on Auto Navy, and we can simulate the voice of celebrities. So when you are driving, the GPS will give you guidance, and it will be an actual human being talking to you, telling you where to drive, how to drive, and it can be a celebrity. And we also collaborated with CCTV documentary. We produced a documentary called Innovation China, and part of the documentary was dubbed by a celebrity, but it's not dubbed by the celebrity himself. It was actually created by artificial intelligence, by our technology. So I think by applying our technology in media world, we can reduce the workload of media friends and journalists. We also have voice recognition. We know the data available to us is not structured. In order to make a better use of the voice resources, we have to structure the material, the data. We can convert voice file into text and the other way around. In this way, we can delete the part of the text and then convert it back to voice. So we do not have to edit the audio file anymore. We can simply edit the text file and convert it back to audio file. That's the work we have been doing.
Let's talk about
非常有意思。
So maybe John Lee, well, we can talk about that because one of the interesting things about technological innovation is that you have this triangle between the practitioners, the businesses serving the practitioners, and then academia doing the research. So what do you really see in this area of artificial intelligence and its applicability into the media space?
Yes, well, I think that as we've heard, there are clearly directions of automation, for example, coming into areas even like journalism. And I think what that depends on is data being used in ways which are clearly thought through and structured, as we were also hearing, such that the data is kind of prepared for this process of automation. And I think that what that means is that you tend to get a kind of convergence of things. People are preparing the material that they've got, they're treating it as data, they're marking it up, they're structuring it in various ways, but those ways tend to converge in order that it can be used by the same kinds of technology. And I think that's a risk from the point of view of innovation. What tends to happen in that kind of situation is that innovation can get squeezed out in certain respects. So I think that one way that we can work between practice and academia is by trying to develop more kind of refined ways of thinking about how that sort of circle works, how we can actually control the development of that circle so that we're taking into account the kinds of developments that are occurring when data is structured, and actually allowing that to be nuanced by the kinds of requirements that creative people need in order to develop new kinds of content and new kinds of techniques of manufacturing and working with content.
That's interesting. Of course, it's not just about the new forms, it's also about how it's actually received. And when I think about companies in this space, one of the ones that I find really interesting is the Chinese company ByteDance, which does Jin'er Toutiao, which uses artificial intelligence to personalize the news in a way that drives absolutely extraordinary engagement figures. What do you think about using artificial intelligence in that manner? Is it actually helpful to media companies? It certainly can make a lot of money, or does it become one of these self-referential processes where people keep on only seeing the things that the machine thinks that they will want, and then nothing new ever breaks into that circle? Man?
Right, I think that's my genuine concern as a practitioner, because if you base on data collection, you only push to people who, to the area or topics they're interested in, so that might lead to like audience fragmentation. So how are we supposed to amplify the diversity of the topics? Because as a journalist, I think it's also one of the responsibility to push forward for social advancement, to educate the public. I'm not trying to be saying that I'm on top of it, but the interactive process definitely will benefit us in terms of content production. However, the way it's trying to cater to individuals' interests, somehow for me is quite dangerous.
What do you think about that, maybe from Tencent's point of view? Where Tencent as a huge corporation, of course, is all about getting more and more audience and more engagement. How do you focus the technology to make sure that there are standards and that it's not an unbalanced effect?
这个方面，我个人认为，这个腾讯在这方面
Personally, I believe well, every company has its own stage of development. Tencent was one of the first internet companies in China, and now it has become one of the world's top 10 internet companies. which means we have a strong sense of corporate social responsibilities. Technology-wise, I think we are ready to do a lot of things, but we have not put those technologies into application for short-term gains. That is mainly because we have that strong sense of corporate social responsibilities. We want to be responsible corporate citizens in the sense that we want to contribute to the creation of a sound media environment. Take, for instance, today everybody's talking about the convergence of media. And I'm not saying, I think instead of talking about just what a traditional media need to do to capture this opportunity, more need to be done to think about how to create value. And in this period of transition, how do media organizations in China find areas where they can create real value? True, now we at Tencent have developed the technologies. We are willing to open those technologies to mainstream media organizations. But mostly this is mainly to help them better understand how to create content that is truly valuable. This is what we're trying to do.
I don't think one of the things that's interesting.
那我觉得比较有意思的一点就是。
Foreign practitioners, Chinese practitioners, one of the things that CGTN and CCTV Plus try to do is have a Chinese point of view on stories. But when you look at the internet, you really have two different worlds of development, because there hasn't been an awful lot of crossover between companies like ByteDance, Total, or Tencent, or the Googles, the Facebooks. They develop in different ways because of different national characteristics. Which are the areas where you think that Chinese companies will make the most headway and actually could teach something to companies outside of China? I think about the personalization. I think about maybe short video, where I think a lot of the Chinese companies have made huge advances. What are some of the other things that, if you were describing the Chinese AI environment to an outsider, would you be most proud of developments and think that there's most that China has to teach the world? Benny Food, would you like to maybe give it a try?
我觉得在中国发展人工智能
I think
一个比较大的优势是
China has a great advantage in developing artificial intelligence, and that is our enormous user base. And as a result of that, the application of all the technologies can potentially find a quick application, because we are going to receive a lot of user feedbacks. At the end of the day, whether you're talking about application of technologies or use of other technologies, at the end of the day, it's all about serving the need of the users. And what we need to understand the most is what users actually want, what do they actually need. Once we apply that information, then we can make adaptations to respond to their needs. And in this constantly technological iteration, we will be able to quickly create value to the users. And I think this is something that we can present proudly to the non-Chinese speakers. I mean, our quick ability is to adjust to the evolving need from the users.
Maybe from the other side, what are the things where you think that the Western internet world, the AI world, is doing things on the media side which have most to offer globally?
Well, I think whenever I come to this part of the world, I'm always struck by how successful the integration in terms of messaging applications are, in terms of providing other services. I mean, the WeChat product is an extraordinarily powerful thing, maybe not for international users, but when you can integrate all of your banking, your social media interaction, your messaging, other services. I mean, I think that's a very successful model, and from my reading of it, and that's something the West and even the giants of Facebook and Google, etc., are probably learning from the other way around. In terms of what does the West have to offer, I think with the idea of what does the user want, it's interesting in terms of there are dangers in creating these echo boxes of certain views being recycled and contained, and people living within. Facebook in particular has got into enormous trouble for creating those echo boxes. So I think commercial news broadcasters would be very concerned not to repeat that. But I think there is a balance about being close to the consumer and creating preferences. I'm actually a big tennis fan, and in my a couple of my news applications that I use very regularly, it spits out to me lots of stuff about tennis that's not threatening democracy. You know, it's just actually a good user experience for me. So I think if you can create a balance where user preferences are key, you're engaging with the application in the right way, it's giving you a good experience, it's opening doors to things that it might not otherwise, without creating the dangerous echo boxes of views just being recycled, then that's a good balance. And I think some of the best practitioners of the market are reaching that.
John, maybe you can comment when you're teaching the issue of digital. How do you deal with some of the issues that Adrian just raised, and also that the previous speaker raised about privacy? How do you balance privacy and personalization, artificial intelligence, and the need to actually have the more individual private experience?
Well, I'm not sure about privacy exactly, but one thing that I believe quite strongly is that what we need to do is think about video, which is a linear medium, essentially, as being something that can be actually brought into a more interactive experience and have other kinds of content built around it, such as, for example, information about other kinds of things brought in other media, social media, and so forth. And I think that there one can have a much more clearly personalized experience. One's media can be actually contributed to by various other material which is possibly sourced from various parts of the internet, which can be then brought into your, as it were, stream and kind of curated along with it and edited for you as a kind of supplement to the material that you happen to be watching at the time. And I think that artificial intelligence and such like techniques give us a lot of power for doing that kind of thing, because material can be found, recruited, perhaps adapted and so forth, and made very relevant to whatever particular topic the user might be interested in at that point. So obviously in that kind of process there are all of these risks of echo boxes and various other kinds of things. On the other hand, there's potentially the opportunity to actually break out of those boxes by, in effect, injecting material which is from outside the box in ways which perhaps people don't immediately feel are adversely, kind of antagonistic to the particular position they hold. So I think that there's a lot of possibilities in that kind of direction in terms of media fusion and thinking about the various blends of technologies we can use to achieve that.
We talk about convergence, but one of the things that always strikes me is that it's the new companies like the ByteDances, like Tencent, that do more of the innovation, and the traditional companies like Reuters, where I originally came from, even CGTN, CCTV, tend to be slower and more conservative in terms of taking risks. What do you think can be done to actually get the big traditional media companies to be even bolder and take bigger risks when it comes to technology?
I think overall, even though I have concerns about new technology, but I think television is based on technology, it's the product of technology. So we have experience from newspaper transformation to TV era, and now it's TV era to digital era. So we still need to embrace with an open mind. However, I think it has a higher requirements for professionals to have digital literacy or to have the set of skill in order to embrace. And I feel the double-edged swords of AI, definitely it can help in processing or free journalists from more labor-intensive work. So maybe we can do more sophisticated processing or thinking about how we want to cover the news. So still open-minded to embrace, but I think with cautious and measured step.
What do you think about that, Adrian? What would it take to get members of your association really to be much bolder and more radical?
I think you're right in saying there's a lot of inertia in the industry. I mean, what I see in many of the companies who I work with very closely are still organizations, although they've read all the right statistics, they've seen PowerPoints like we've seen today talking about the move to digital consumption, the move to mobile devices being the primary device through which people consume whatever content they want to consume, their organizations are still very geared towards producing linear TV. Any morning meeting will be dominated by those guys and gals on the linear TV product. And I think there's now a disconnect between people having assimilated the big trends that are out there in the global market, and yet still finding it difficult to reorganize themselves, if you like, to this different way of consuming media, whether that's in the news or in the entertainment industry. So I think that is a big problem, and I think the guys like Tencent, where they have an advantage, is that they were starting without all of that 50-year legacy of TV infrastructure, and I think it's given them a jump start. And I think traditional TV companies should be mindful of leaving the luggage behind a bit quicker than they perhaps are.
So Yanpeng, maybe you can talk to that a little bit. When you're selling to more traditional companies, how do you get them excited about what you have? How do you get them to see new potential that maybe you and your engineers are very clear about, but it's harder to convince a more conservative company that it's really good for them?
其实这个问题呢，我觉得我们更应该探讨。
I think what we should talk more about is the media organization itself. Media, first of all, is a medium, and second, is a carrier of a content. Sure, I understand now the technology has been developing very quickly. We are moving from 2G to 3G and then 4G and soon 5G. We as a technology company believe 5G is going to create a very disruptive impact on media with the application of a VR and AR. Probably with the introduction of 5G, we don't even need to be physically here to conduct this interview. That's going to create a lot of very good consumer experience. This is number one. Secondly, about the content, I think the advantage of news professionals is everybody's aspiration for quality news products, and I think that is unlikely going to change however technology evolves. As I said, we will soon enter into an area of 5G, which means we will be able to deliver content with 4K or even 8K. So the technology is progressing, but there's a pursuit of excellence for quality is always there. So I think finding a way to incorporate the technology with good content is the key going forward for media organization in the future. If a media professional really understand the role of technology in helping them create content and disseminate content, they will be rather open-minded about it and embrace it.
So maybe can you pick up on that? What are some of the
接下去我们再来
talking about, say, artificial voice, and when you went to CCTV and you talked about doing the artificial voice in a documentary, was it hard to get them to agree, or were they very eager to agree?
我觉得这个问题呢，其实我比较同意我们这边。
I think I quite agree with the agent's opinion that we have a carrier and we have a medium. Medium is actually the technology we use to facilitate our work, to make our work easier. But we can use a very good benchmark to measure that. For the first line media friends, maybe they will think a certain part of it is quite boring, so they can make use of technology to liberate them from this part of work so they can get engaged with the fun part. I think the ultimate goal of technology is to service people. The critical part is to decide how to use the technology. For content creation, I think the most important part is that the value proposition of the content must be in line with the general pursuit of the society, and it has to be personal, emotional, and it can meet the requirements of the needs of the users for content. Thank you.
Adrian, do you think that media companies have the right people in the right jobs? Or do you think that the media executive of the future has to be much more digitally literate and technologically capable than they are today?
They probably don't. I think that all good organizations are a product of their good people. And I think that, another presentation I heard recently was looking at what happened in the print industry. And if you like, that impact of disruption happened 10, 15 years before it's happened to the broadcast industry. And this commentator was saying how this organization needed to change half of the people in their organization in order to reorientate towards a different kind of future. And part of that is definitely cost, because people are expensive. And any media business knows that unless you're on the content production side like Netflix, most TV news businesses, 70% of the costs are revolving around people. So that's why these discussions about AI and automation are incredibly important as well. So no, I think some of the right people are there and some of the wrong people are there, and people who can see the opportunities of the products that you're talking about to create different kinds of experiences using, clever facial recognition tools, using different applications. I think actually, in general, as I was suggesting before, there's not enough emphasis on the mobile experience, for news companies in particular. I think that could be prioritized more, and inevitably that means pulling in people who are more comfortable with using and creating mobile experiences, whether it's augmented reality applications or looking into immersive news or knowing how to create that content. So oftentimes those skills might not be in traditional news companies, so yeah, you have to go and find it from other companies.
John, what do you do within the academic world to try to create the right new journalists of the future? Are you doing enough to combine technology and traditional journalism training?
That's a very good question. I think that really the important skills, in some sense, of journalism probably remain the same. It's really important to find facts, find stories, pull them together, understand what kinds of things people want. But on the other hand, I think that the ways in which those stories are brought to people and made available to people, and the ways in which people are able to use those stories perhaps to develop their own conversations and various other kinds of activities around them are changing faster than any of us can keep up with. So I think that in terms of education, whatever we give our students around the technology area is something that in 5 years' time, will have changed almost out of recognition, probably certainly in 10 years' time. And so, what we have to give them more than anything else is the skills to work with technology which is rapidly changing, to adapt, to be able to take that on board and work with it. But around that, I think the other kind of crucial things that we really have to have in mind are things like ethics, things like understanding the important ground base of what journalism is all about, which is the sort of thing that can be seen shifting underneath people in ways that, it's as if there's an earthquake going on. People have to somehow retain their balance, and that's difficult, but I think that's the sort of thing that we have to find ways of coping with.
And within CGTN, what do you look for when you hire today, and how are you training the people that you already have?
I think the most difficult part, or the most important part, is still the talents that can bridge the gap between content and technology. Or what I mean is to use the right technology or choose the right technology to produce the content you want to deliver to your audience. For example, the VRs, the 360 degree, these are all new technology that really change the static kind of sender-receiver one-way flow, then provide kind of immersive kind of experience, and that change the narrative or change the way of storytelling. But then, first of all, I think all the journalists needs to have understanding of new technology or willing to learn. Right now, I think depends on institutions to provide those talents can be difficult. I think they have created a lot of like digital kind of department to study new media. But right now, it's more like process when we recruit people, if they have digital experience or has worked, have certain understanding of internet, have the social media, or are willing to learn technology, that would be highly valued. It does have a higher requirements these days, I feel.
And can media companies pay enough to get the right people, or will the technologically literate, cutting-edge people all go off to work in fintech and banks and brokerages?
That's also the challenging part. If we compete with Tencent, I don't think the salary range will be competitive. Yeah. So it does needs also people have the idea of trying to pursue journalism. They love journalism, and that's still the core, because what we're doing is not new technology. It's how new technology in kind of facilitate journalists to do our work better and to better engage with our users.
So you're still looking for the people who have journalism in their heart and then maybe
have
technology
a digital
in their mind.
Yeah, or tech savvy. So.
Well, let's have more of an immersive experience today and go to the audience to see if there are questions for our great panel. There's one over there. Can we get a mic to the person in the third row there? Put your hand up again so they can see you. Over there on the far side. Run. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, great discussion. In the first Jurassic Park movie, Jeff Goldblum's character is shown the process which the scientists used to reanimate dinosaurs and all that. And the quote, I'm probably going to misquote it, but it was something along the lines of, you guys spent so much time thinking about if we can do it, but not enough, should we be doing it? And I was struck by that reference when, was it Benny was talking about the voice recognition or recreating celebrity voices to get them to say whatever they like. I'm wondering if, firstly, Benny can talk about the ethical considerations he and his team used, and if also the other panelists could sort of talk about whether they think that we've opened a Pandora's box here and not sort of thinking about the long-term ethical considerations that come with such technology.
That's a great question. Benny, would you like to talk about why did you do that in the first place? Why recreate a celebrity voice? Is it the right thing to do? How do you keep from using that celebrity's voice to say something that they actually wouldn't want to say?
Just like I mentioned in the example, it's Innovation China documentary. We used the voice of a famous celebrity here in China. Of course, we get the consent in advance. The application of the technology is for the purpose of serving people, to make us more efficient, more effective. The technology itself can never do the job. AI can be used as an aid to do the work for us, but we have to get the license or consent of relevant people. It's people-machine working together for efficiency. Before, it would require a lot of time to finish the same amount of work. Now we can finish it in a short period of time because of the assistance of machine.
What do other people think are
其他人是怎么看的呢？伦理方面，是否也和技术一样发展的足够快？
I can imagine Claire Foy, who played the Queen, quite happily I could set my GPS and listen to her guiding me around, how to get to Manchester or whatever. That would be fine. I don't think there's too many ethical considerations about that. But to have her commentating on the royal wedding or something might be inappropriate. So I guess that comes down to that crossover of what's the use case, I think it's a fun application. We should be able to, but I'm sure the line will be crossed. We should be able to delineate which is appropriate and which is inappropriate.
Within a company like Tencent, do you have discussions about ethics, about what should you do, what should you not do, what things that you just don't want to get involved in?
其实在这个整个 AI 的这个应用，
In AI application, we are being very cautious. We talk about facial recognition. This technology is also adopted by Tencent. Last year, we applied facial recognition in a project which won us a huge award internationally. Such facial recognition technology is used to find missing children. Maybe 10 years ago, the child went missing. After 10 years, the appearance of the child changed a lot, but some fundamental features will remain the same. So we use the facial recognition technology to help find missing children. We have recovered more than 130-something children who went missing 10 years ago. This is an AI application. We have to find the right project to apply AI. There is a Swift application. For example, we all have iPhone, and facial recognition can be used for face unlock. This is also AI. This is also facial recognition, and we try to benchmark our technology against international standards, and we try to find which applications are indeed suitable for the adoption of such technology. We are trying to do more on this front.
John, you wanted to say something on this?
Well, I think the lesson of history, so to speak, is that the biggest risks don't come from major organizations which have, by and large, generally quite good ethical controls built into them, but from sort of pirate operators of one sort or another. And I think that the problems with things like fake news are that it's, I think, sooner than probably we imagine, going to be quite possible to synthesize very believable footage of virtually anything you can imagine, really. And that has all sorts of problems. And the people that want to use that kind of capability for various kinds of ends that we'd rather they didn't are not likely to be the sort of people sitting on this platform. So I think how we actually combat that problem is an increasingly pressing issue, and I don't really have any answers, but I think that is certainly something which is going to be more and more problematic.
Great. Other questions? Yes.
Hello. I come from Cambodian STV. I have a question to ask Keda Xunfei. Yeah, we always talk about the international media cooperation. Actually, the biggest problem is the language. It's hard for us to understand each other because of language. So now we talk about this. So how about Keda Xunfei to work in AI translator? And how about the AI translator will help the media cooperation, especially international media cooperation? And thank you.
Since we're talking about the translation, first of all, I would like to thank the simultaneous translators for today, because my English is not really very good. It is almost impossible for me to speak English in occasions like this. In fact, when it comes to machine translation, we at Hi-Fi Tech has done a lot. The hope is for machine translation to facilitate communication in a multilingual environment, at least to provide assistance to simultaneous interpreters. And now when it comes to machine translation, what we can achieve is to get the general picture rough message across, especially for a very simple scenario of application like a daily conversation, but it is almost impossible for us to provide a simultaneous interpretation for a conference like today. But our hope is to continue this work so that we'll be able to provide assistance to media reporters or simultaneous translators. Now we are working in collaboration with Shanghai Foreign Studies University. We have collaboratively built a lab. So when students are being trained to become a simultaneous interpreter, we also do our machine translation. We compare the outcome of a human versus machine. This is just a guidance for them.
Man, I'm going to give you the last word. In 3 years, which is a long time in technology and also a long time in journalism, what's the one biggest hope you have the way technology will change your job?
I think CGTN is working arduously, trying to integrate with the new technology. I hope new technology will empower us journalists to do our job better to serve the great audience and the users.
Great. Thank you very much to a really excellent panel. Thank you to the audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schlesinger, and to our panelists. Great discussion, very serious matter, very important matters. I'm sure we'll be continue talking about them. Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to wrap up this today's program. In 3 years, I'm not going to be replaced by an artificial presenter. I'm sure about that. So I'll keep my job. So ladies and gentlemen, we are just about wrapping up, but I do have a few notes, housekeeping notes. Later, at about 4:30, CCTV Plus is arranging a partner exchange meeting called CCTV Plus and its friends for their customers around the world. So please visit CCTV Plus booth outside this meeting hall if you have intention to participate in that. And later tonight, there will be a CGTN night, which is a gala presented to you by CGTN, mixing traditional Sichuan culture and the modern urban culture of Chongqing. So you're cordially invited to participate in that program. A little bit of technicality. If you are living in 雅诗特酒店，我们所有住在雅诗特酒店的朋友们，请您从这个酒店先坐大巴回到雅诗特酒店，一会儿这个大巴就要发车，请大家在参加完这个今天的活动之后呢，乘坐大巴回到你们的雅诗特酒店，然后从那边大约6点半的时候再坐大巴前往 CGTN 之夜的现场，好吧 ？So for all of you who are living here. The coach will depart from this hotel at 6:30 for CGTN night. Yes, is that clear? Thank you very much for your participation and your attention. I wish you a wonderful evening and see you tomorrow at the same place. Thank you.